What is going on, everybody? It is the Icebreaker here, back with another video for some more NHL hockey content and continuing on our little mini series of our divisional standings predictions for the 2025-2026 NHL season. This video, we are going to be dissecting the Central Division. Despite the Central Division being probably the strongest division in the NHL, to be honest with you guys, I don't think there's going to be a ton of surprising takes with this division. Not nearly as much as the Pacific, although the Pacific was pretty standard consensus, I would say. But as for the Central, I don't see a huge amount of change in comparison to last season. But whatever, let's get right into the video. Without further ado, my Central Division standings predictions. And coming in last, another not so surprising take at the bottom of the Central, I'm going with the Chicago Blackhawks. I think they are obviously a very young team, still rebuilding. I do think they're going to be slightly better than last season. They had 61 points last year. So I have them getting 70. Still going to be only good enough for a bottom three record in the NHL. But I am encouraged by some of the moves they made. And I think their young core is going to, develop and get even better. And the Hawks will take a small step forward for a 70-point season. Despite the exciting future that they have, there's still pretty much holes throughout every aspect of their roster. Up front, I like Connor Bedard. Obviously, he didn't have the amazing second season that everyone anticipated from him. But, a 67-point season from a 19-year-old. I don't think that's that bad. Honestly, I think he took a lot more heat than he should have. I know a lot of people were criticizing his complete game and suggesting that he was just playing pond hockey. He's known for his offense. He's a very skilled forward, and obviously he's not really a defensive guy. I don't think he ever will be. So I think, the Hawks have a ton of time to continue to develop and grow as a group. So Bedard, I still believe he has a high ceiling. He's going to be probably one of the top 15 at least best players in the league once he hits his prime at the very least. So yeah, I expect him to have a great third season. Like I mentioned in my great breakout players video, I think Frank Nazar is due for a big season as well. Apart from that, I'm not a huge fan of their forward group. I think if a guy like Ryan Donato can replicate the season he had, obviously they fare much better. Tyler Bertuzzi, Teuvo Teravainen, decent additions. Not sure what they will give quite in the same way that they did when they were kind of in their primes. But honestly, it's for short term, it's still a decent top six, but the forward group is still definitely lacking. On the blue line, more of the same, definitely one of the weaker blue lines in the league, but they do have a lot of young and promising defensemen. Alex Vlasic, I think, is turned out to be a really solid pro at his young age, and I think he's only going to get better. Sam Rinzel entering his rookie season, I think, could be very impactful. I think a lot of people see him as having a very high offensive ceiling. Artem Leshinov, who they drafted a couple years ago, could be a guy that, sticks out of camp first full season. He could have a pretty big impact in a top four role there. And between the pipes, honestly, I think the goaltending tandem is honestly not that bad with Spencer Knight and Arvid Soderblom. Maybe they don't quite have that typical 1A or true starter, but Spencer Knight, who is still relatively young, he was drafted very high in the first round. He still has that ceiling to be a starting goaltender. Since coming over from the Panthers late last season, he definitely showed that he has the capability of taking his game to another level. And I think obviously he's going to have plenty of opportunity to be the starter for the Blackhawks. And I think he's going to do really well in that role. I still believe that there is more to give there. He still has yet to reach his ceiling. And Arvid Soderblom has had stretches where he's played really solid. And I think a 1-2 punch of those two, you could do a lot worse, in my opinion. But ultimately, still a very young team. And just considering the division that they're in, I don't really expect them quite yet ready to take that next step forward and, challenging for the playoffs necessarily. But again, bright future, got a ton of young talent there. It's just really about just continuing to add some building blocks to eventually become the contender that they want to be in the coming 2, 3, 4 years from now. But I still have them last in the division. The Central is just way too tough. Coming at 7th in the Central Division, I got the Nashville Predators having a bit of a better season from last year. I don't think they can be any worse than last season with 68 points. I only have them with 75, though. And again, it has a lot to do with the Central Division. It was really difficult to put them this low because I do think there is bounce back potential for them to at least be a lot more competitive. But in terms of like them being to the point where they can be back into the playoffs, it was hard for me to rank many other teams behind the Nashville Predators. And even like, I even thought about even having the Blackhawks ahead of them, to be honest with you, because I'm really excited with their forward group. And I think their entire team and their young core, that I think they could like maybe low-key surprise and be a lot better than people think. But as for the Predators, I gave them the benefit of the doubt because they're still a veteran team with a lot of solid talent still there, with some guys that are capable of maybe having some bounce back seasons. But in that tough Central Division, it was tough to rank them higher than 7th. But a big factor for the Predators having success this season is going to be their goaltending. UC Saros is coming off a very disappointing season, and I think when he's on his game, he's honestly one of the best goaltenders in the NHL. If he can bounce back to a degree, I think it makes the Predators a much more dangerous team. But yeah, like, it's a lot to ask for when you look at the blue line that he has in front of him, apart from Roman Josi, who is still an elite defenseman, although he is already like 35 years old. He's probably, going to be starting to exit the prime of his career if he hasn't already. Obviously, he suffered a pretty serious injury. It kept him out for a big chunk of the season last year. Big reason why they were so bad. But yeah, when you look beyond Roman Josi, especially with the news of Nicholas Hague looking to miss a significant time to start the season, that blue line just doesn't look very good. Not that much better than it was last season. So it's really hard to see them bouncing back from the defensive side. On the offensive side, though, I think Steven Stamkos is capable of more than just a 25-goal, 50-ish point season. Same with Jonathan Marchessault, even though it was going to be near impossible for him to replicate the year he had previous with Vegas, where he had over 40 goals. But still, I think they're both capable of way more in top 6 roles. Philip Forsberg's going to give you, flirting with a point per game, over 70 points like he normally does. Ryan O'Reilly, I think, is still obviously a very solid two-way centerman, although maybe not the player he once was. I think offensively he could still, be in line to take some steps back. But yeah, even their younger guys, like, I don't see a high upside with a lot of their players in their lineup as it currently stands, and a lot of their high-end prospects are just not ready to make the jump. So with Nashville, it was hard to rank them this low, but for me, I just don't see quite enough upside with the Predators in comparison to the teams I have ahead of them in the Central Division. So for that simple reason, I got them 7th in the Central, just with 75 points. But apart from those two teams, the rest of the Central Division, I think, is going to be an absolute bloodbath. However, there is one team, because I do have 5 teams coming out of the Central Division. If you didn't see the Pacific, I only have 3 teams making the playoffs out of the Pacific. So 5 are going to make it out of the Central, in my opinion. But there is one team that I had to pick to miss the playoffs. And unfortunately, I've leaned towards the Minnesota Wild being that team. I have them 6th in the Central Division. I have them just barely missing the playoffs, collecting 93 points on the year. Now, I think with a team like Minnesota, their window hasn't quite opened up yet, with a ton of great prospects that are still up and coming and are going to make a great impact on the team. And especially with the news that just broke earlier today that Kirill Kaprizov is in fact staying in Minnesota long-term, signing an 8-year extension with an AAV of $17 million a season. Obviously, the salary cap's going up, and I mean, the Wild obviously wanted to lock up their franchise player, so totally understandable with how pricey it is, or how pricey it looks now, but it probably will age a little bit better as the cap continues to grow. So he is going to be that main catalyst for years to come. When he's healthy, he is undoubtedly a top 10 player in the NHL. The argument can be made that he's top 5. He's just that dynamic offensively. But apart from that, I'm just not quite there. I'm not quite sold on the forward group as a whole, at least not right now. Matt Boldy, I think, is a fantastic player, and I think he is a guy that can potentially flirt with the point per game and be a consistent 75, 80-ish point guy over the course of his career. Joel Eriksson Ek is a solid two-way centerman, but is he a number 1 center? I don't think so. Same with Marco Rossi, a little undersized, although a 60-point season. Not sure quite what his ceiling is at the NHL level. Matt Zuccarello, I think, is just getting up there in age, and I just only expect his production to continue to go down. And apart from that, there's just not a lot of great goal support there. The secondary secondary players, the bottom of the lineup guys, I just don't quite see enough. The Vladimir Tarasenko addition, I think, is a weird one to me because, I mean, this past season was any indication. I just don't think he's the Vladimir Tarasenko of old, and I just don't envision him having any sort of resurgence at this stage of his career, given how underwhelming, for a lack of a better term, that he was with the Red Wings. I'm just a little bit iffy on that signing. I know it's more of a low risk, high reward type of thing. I just don't think that's quite going to pan out. Yeah, so the forward group, I just think there's a lot left to be desired there. Although defensively, I think they're very solid with Jared Spurgeon, Jonas Brodin, Brock Faber, who's coming off a bit of a underwhelming second year, but I think he'll get back to kind of form in his third season, and Zeev Buium, who I think is going to be in line for the Calder Trophy, essentially, and I think he's going to have a big rookie season, lead the blue line for the Wild offensively. So solid pieces back there. The goaltending's pretty solid as well, with Philip Gustafsson leading the way. Coming off a really solid year, although he's been very inconsistent the last few years. I mean, he was phenomenal 3 years ago. 2 years ago, he was terrible. And this past season, very, very steady. So I'm a little bit concerned about him. I just don't know, what kind of goaltender we're going to get from him, just because that position in general is just very volatile. You never really know season to season, especially a guy like Gustafsson, who hasn't consistently proven it, in consecutive years, that he can be a top-end goaltender. So that's another concern I have with the Wild. But overall, I don't mind this team. I think they're going to have a really good season. It's just the Central Division to me is really strong. And I look at other teams and the depth that they have. For me, the Minnesota Wild, I just think are a step behind. So for that reason, I have them just missing the playoffs. I got them 6th in the Central Division. As for 5th in the Central, just barely squeaking into the playoffs as the second wild card, I'm going with the Utah Mammoth to take the next step forward, finally make the postseason. I got them getting 94 points, just barely edging out the Minnesota Wild. I just think in comparison, I think the Utah Mammoth have a more complete team. I'm definitely a much bigger fan of their forward group. When you have Logan Cooley, who's only going to continue to get better and is going to be a future first line center for sure. Or, I mean, he already is the top line center, but I think he'll become that caliber of player. He will eventually be a perennial point per game guy. Not to mention their captain Clayton Keller, who's coming off a 90-point season, one of the best wingers in the NHL, in my opinion. Dylan Guenther, I think, has a high ceiling as one of the better goal scorers. The J.J. Peterka ad in that trade, sending Michael Kesselring to Buffalo, I think is massive to give them a little bit more of a punch on their top 6, and he's a guy that can easily have the best season of his career with Utah, given the talent that he will be surrounded with. Not to mention, I like Nick Schmaltz. I think he's been a solid addition for the last few years in that organization with the Coyotes, and then obviously with the Utah Hockey Club last season. Barrett Hayton's a solid center as well. Both those guys have been pretty much among the more underrated players in the league. Honestly, their bottom 6 I kind of like as well. Like I mentioned with Lawson Krause, I think he'll be better than he was last season. I am a pretty big fan of the Brandon Tanev edition, although he's not going to give you much offensively. I just think he fits perfectly for that bottom 6 there. And on the defensive side, I think if they get healthier, obviously Mikhail Sergachev leading the way, I think still can be one of the best defensemen in the league. And then you obviously getting back John Marino long-term, from his injury, as well as Sean Durzi, who I think has still quite a bit of a ceiling that is yet to reach. I really do like the additions of them coming back, being fully healthy. So their blue line is going to be a lot more steady, and adding a Stanley Cup champion in Nate Schmidt to complement their top 6 in terms of their defensemen. Really, really a good group there that they've built. Between the pipes, they got Karel Vejmelka, who I think had a really solid year last season. I think can still improve on that, build on that season, and just all he has to do is be solid, because I think the team overall very well structured, and I think Utah shouldn't really miss a beat this year. So ultimately, I think they have a slightly better roster than Minnesota. That's why I'm giving them the edge. And it was part of my bolder takes video, but I do think that Utah is finally ready to take that step forward with the young talent that they have. They have a bright future, and they're only getting started. I got the Mammoth in the postseason, 5th in the Central, 94 points. Coming in at 4th in the Central Division and taking that first wild card in the Western Conference playoffs, I got the Winnipeg Jets. I still think they're going to have a really good season. Obviously, I have them with 100 points. But as a wild card team, that's pretty high. But I do think that it's inevitable that they are going to take a step back from the President's Trophy winning team that they had last season, getting 116 points. And I do think there's a couple of teams in the Central that might have leapfrogged them. I wasn't a huge fan of their offseason, to be honest with you. And I do think that it's a given that they're probably going to regress a little bit. However, I still have them having a solid season, but only fourth in the Central. Now, obviously, Connor Hellebuck is arguably the best goalie in the league. He's coming off a Vezina trophy as well as the Hart trophy. Obviously solidified himself as a top goaltender. The playoffs has a different story. I don't know what's going on with him in the postseason. It seems to be night and day in terms of how amazing he is in the regular season and how underwhelming he is in the postseason, but obviously still a good goaltender, and he is going to give the Jets a chance to win every single night. On the defensive end, I still think they're pretty solid. Probably not the greatest team, but they're not the worst team either. Obviously, Josh Morrissey leading the charge. He is still a fantastic defenseman, one of the more underrated ones in the NHL. But my issue is up front. I think they have a fantastic top line, arguably the best top line in the league. Just look at them statistically. I mean, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Gabe Vilardi all complement each other really well. They have insane chemistry, and all of those guys are just fantastic. So that top line, not worried about. The depth scoring, on the other hand, losing Nikolai Ehlers, that's a big loss for them. That's a guy who can give you 60 to 70 points on any given season. That is the perfect forward to have on a second line, mind you, as well. They don't have that anymore now. Cole Perfetti, there's going to be some pressure on him to take a step forward, which I think he can, but I don't know how high of a ceiling he truly has, to be quite honest with you. I'm not sure if he's good enough to ever be a top line guy, but obviously this is a big year for him to prove that he is more than just a 50-point player. Jonathan Toews, I don't know what we're going to get from him at this point of his career. He is already like 37 years old. And if they're projecting him to be the second line center, especially without Adam Lowry for the start of this season, that's another key factor in why I think the Jets could take a step back. They don't have their captain, who is just a versatile Swiss Army knife, can be used in any situation. Big loss for them in the early going. But back to Toews, I just don't know what we're getting from him. Obviously, before he took that hiatus, he was already looking like he was declining a little bit, especially offensively. And I just can't envision him returning to being a, top end two-way beast, 60-plus point guy. I just don't think that's in the cards for him anymore. And in terms of the other additions, like Gus Nyquist, not coming off the greatest season. Tanner Pearson's more of a fourth liner at this stage of his career. Okay, depth additions, but nothing that's going to move the needle that will kind of carry over from last season. I just think that offensively, they should be inclined to take a significant step back. And honestly, in terms of the other three teams I have ahead of the Winnipeg Jets, I just think their ceilings are much higher. So for that reason, I only have the Jets in fourth, taking quite a bit of a step back. However, 100-point season, still going to be a top 10 team in the league, in my opinion, and they'll be a playoff team as the first wild card. Fourth in the Central, the Winnipeg Jets. Now, moving into the top three, I'm actually going with the St. Louis Blues in third. I'm actually a little bit higher on them than most people. I just think they're a much better team than people have given them credit for. I know a lot of people will maybe view them as kind of being a little bit lucky because they were kind of sort of a middling team throughout the majority of the season, and then they just got hot at the right time. They went on a 12-game winning streak, and then they followed suit into down the stretch and making the playoffs just barely, but that crazy run honestly got them in there. And then obviously, speaking about the Jets, we just covered, nearly upset them in the first round. The Blues did. I mean, they were up 3-1 the final 2 minutes of Game 7. They were that close from advancing to a second round. So to me, the Blues, I think, actually have quite a high ceiling. I think up front, the Blues have one of the better forward groups in the entire NHL. The depth that they have is unbelievable. Robert Thomas is emerging. I mean, he's already emerged as a true number one center. He's one of the best in the league. He's probably a top 10 centerman in the NHL at this point. Jordan Kyrou is a awesome 30 to 40 goal scorer. Big point producer, is a guy that can put the puck in the net. Dylan Holloway having a breakout season. I think he'll build off of last year as well. Pavel Buchnevich completes the top line. He's been solid guy. Really broken out, coming to his own since coming over from the Rangers to the Blues. Jimmy Snuggerud, I think, is going to have a big rookie season as well. Even the additions that they made to their bottom six, Nick Bukestad's a fine guy for a fourth liner. Pius Suter can center a second line, arguably more of a third line guy, but again, a guy who just came off a 25 goal season in your middle six. Just perfect addition for their depth up front. And even on the blue line, I think they've also proven that they're a lot better than they've been given credit for in years past. Philip Broberg having also a breakout season, both the offer sheet guys from the Edmonton Oilers making them look kind of stupid, but it is what it is. I mean, he got the opportunity and he's rolled with it. Cam Fowler coming over has looked like fit in like a glove basically since coming over from the Ducks. Colton Parayko still pretty solid. Obviously, they added Logan Mailloux in the Zach Bolduc trade. That could be a guy who's NHL ready and could step into a solid role there as well. And even in the goal, I mean, as big of a wild card as Jordan Binnington can be, I mean, he's shown moments where he can be one of the better goalies in the league. I mean, he's proved it at Four Nations. When push came to shove, he was the guy that stepped up and was key in Canada winning. As big of a wild card as he is, I still think that he can be one of the better goalies in the league when he's on his game, obviously. But the Blues, all around, I think they're just a very solid team. One of the more underrated teams in the league, and I actually think they're going to be better than they were last season. So much so that I think they're going to be a top 3 team in the Central Division. 102-point season for them. Second in the Central, I'm going with the Colorado Avalanche to have a really good season. 106 points, a top 5 team in the NHL, in my opinion. I think they just have also a fairly complete team. Obviously, when you have guys like Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar leading the way, I think they are capable of making any team a great team. Very top heavy. I know the depth has been a concern as of late, but, you know, Valeri Nichushkin, him coming back fully healthy, fully ready for game time. He is one of the better wingers. I mean, playing on a line with McKinnon, I think he's in for one of the best seasons of his career. Same can be said with Artturi Lehkonen. I mean, he's really broken out since being traded out of Montreal to Colorado and being a top 6 forward. You got Marty Necas, who is a point-per-game player. I mean, he broke out last season, even at the start of the year when he was still with Carolina. Although I know that there's been rumors that he's not happy in Colorado and maybe his long-term future is in question. But at the moment, he's still on the team, still one of the better players, obviously. And also a big factor, Gabriel Landeskog coming back, his first full season since the last time the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup in 2022. He looked like he didn't really miss a beat when he played in the playoffs there in their short playoff run, only going to the first round and losing in 7 to the Stars. But I think he could still be an impactful guy. He's still in his early 30s, has a lot left in the tank. So honestly, I really think that he's going to have a big season for them and help them out. Brock Nelson, still a solid second-line center, even though he's getting up there in age. I do like the Victor Olofsson addition as well, a very sneaky guy that can put the puck in the net and really help their depth a little bit. And on the defensive end, you got Cale Makar, Devon Toews leading the way. I think that speaks for itself. And one of the things that really held this team back, and the fact that they still had over 100 points is phenomenal, but their goaltending was so terrible to start the season. And then when they made those trades for Scott Wedgwood and then Mackenzie Blackwood, the team just flipped their switch and they just went on an absolute tear. So I think a full season with solid goaltending like that, the Avs are going to be a much, much more dangerous team in the regular season and will eventually carry them into the playoffs as, you know, in a high seeding scenario. So there really isn't that much else to say about the Avs. I'm just encouraged about their team. Their top end talent is going to carry them yet again, like I pretty much say every season when I talk about the Avalanche. But yeah, they're a team with a high ceiling. I think they're easily one of the better teams in the Central, and that's why I have them second in that division. 106-point season for them. But winning the Central Division, not only that, have them winning the President's Trophy. I'm going with the Dallas Stars to have a 113-point season. And yeah, lead the way in the NHL. I still think that this team is as complete as ever. The only real weakness they have is maybe on the right side of their defense. But when you have guys like Miro Heiskanen, Esa Lindell, Thomas Harley on the other side, I think they'll fare fine. You know, they can elevate their other D partner in those roles. Still a loaded lineup throughout the roster. Mikko Rantanen, to me, is a franchise caliber player, and I think he's going to prove it this season, so much so that I think he's going to be in consideration for the Hart Trophy. They still got a solid young group of guys that are only entering their primes in Wyatt Johnston and Jason Robertson, who's still a point-per-game guy. Roope Hintz, one of the best two-way centers in the league, one of the more underrated players in the NHL as well. Matt Duchene, who's coming off a great season, and I think he'll have a similar one as well. Just a solid forward group, a lot of young talent, and a lot of skill there. And even between the pipes, I mean, Jake Ottinger at any point can prove that he's a top goalie in the league. And I mean, he's already probably a top 10 guy. Now, the main concern is they did lose quite a bit of depth in the offseason, getting rid of Marchment and Evgeny Dadonov and Mikhail Granlund. But regardless, I still think this team from top down is one of the best in the league, and I think they're going to prove it this season. They're going to win that division. They're going to be the best team in the NHL, in my opinion, at least in the regular season. A team that's just loaded at all aspects. No true weakness, really, overall. So, yeah, the Stars are just a team that I think the Central is their division to lose, and I'm very high on this team entering this season, as probably most people are. The Stars are going to be a contender for years to come because they're set really well for the present and the future. So I got the Stars first in the Central. And with that, that is going to wrap up my Central Division standings predictions for the NHL 2025-2026 season. As always, let me know your thoughts and your comments down below. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my rankings. Give me your own rankings for this division as well. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Click like if you liked it. Click subscribe if you really liked the video. And I will talk to you again in the next one.